All right, listen up. Your mission, should you choose to accept it, is to master the pituitary traps that take down countless students on their medical boards. We're going to identify the threats, dismantle the bad logic, and secure those critical points. Let's get to it.
Okay, let's get our bearings. Our target is the master gland itself, the pituitary. It's basically command central for the entire endocrine system, and it's housed deep inside the skull in this little bony fortress called the sella turcica. And its location, well, its location is everything, because when something starts to grow there, the neighbors are the first to know.
And this leads us to the very first consequence. You see, a pituitary mass doesn't just cause hormone problems, it causes something called mass effect. It starts pressing on the stuff around it, specifically the optic chiasm. That's where the optic nerves cross over. And this pressure creates a super-specific pattern of vision loss, bitemporal hemianopsia. Your patient literally loses their peripheral vision. It's like they're looking through a tunnel. This is a classic trigger in any board question.
Now, a quick word on our rules of engagement. This briefing is a high-yield educational tool, and it's designed specifically for international medical exams. It is not, I repeat, not medical advice. For any real-world clinical decisions, you always follow official guidelines and consult with your specialists.
Okay, time for our first threat analysis. We are targeting a subtle but incredibly common error involving something called the Stalk Effect. This is where a critical size-level mismatch will lead you straight into a trap if you're not paying attention.
So here's the scenario. You've got a patient, their MRI shows a big 2-centimeter mass, that's a macroadenoma for sure. But when you check their prolactin level, it's only 85. The intern on your team, all excited, immediately calls it a macroprolactinoma. So the question for you is, do you agree with that diagnosis? Does that actually make sense?
No way. And this is the heart of the trap. We call it the size-level mismatch. The intern has made a major error in their reasoning, and understanding exactly why is how you're going to avoid it yourself.
Here's the piece of intel you absolutely have to know. A true macroprolactinoma, a big tumor that is actively pumping out prolactin, should be producing massive amounts of it. We're talking levels way over 200, and honestly, they're usually up in the thousands. A level of 85? That's barely a blip. So what in the world is really going on here?
It all comes down to this mechanism. See, normally, the hypothalamus sends dopamine down the pituitary stalk to act like a brake, telling the pituitary to stop releasing prolactin. But now, look what's happening. A large, non-secretory tumor is physically crushing that stalk. It's like someone just cut the brake line on your car. The dopamine can't get through to put the brakes on anymore, so prolactin levels just kind of drift up, but only moderately. And that, right there, is the Stalk Effect.
Awesome! First threat neutralized. Let's move on to our second target. This trap involves a totally different hormone and a fundamental misunderstanding of its physiology, what I call the pulsatility problem.
All right, new case. You see a patient with all the classic signs of acromegaly. You know, the enlarged hands, the prominent jaw. What's your first move? If your brain immediately jumped to order a random growth hormone level, whoops, you just walked right into another huge board trap. That is the wrong first step.
And here is exactly why. Growth hormone is pulsatile. It's released in these big spikes all throughout the day. That means if you take a single random measurement, you could easily catch it in a low point, in a trough, and get a false negative. The much more reliable test is IGF-1. You can think of IGF-1 as a stable 24-hour average of all that GH activity. It smooths out all those peaks and valleys and gives you a much clearer picture of the real story.
So let's burn the correct protocol into your brain. Step 1 is always to screen with the stable marker, serum IGF-1. Only if that's high do you move on to Step 2, the confirmatory test, which is the oral glucose suppression test. You see, in a normal person, a big load of sugar will suppress growth hormone release. But in a patient with acromegaly, that tumor just keeps churning out GH no matter what. If the GH fails to suppress, the diagnosis is confirmed.
Okay, we've dismantled the two biggest traps. Now it's time to lock this knowledge in so it becomes second nature. Let's run a quick-fire drill. You ready?
First one up, you see a pituitary mass and the prolactin level is over 200. What is it?
That's a true Prolactinoma. The level is high enough to match the secretory tumor.
Next one, you've got a large mass, but the prolactin is under 100. What's the mechanism?
That's the Stalk Effect. The mass is just blocking dopamine's inhibitory signal.
Okay, switching gears. You suspect acromegaly. What's the single best initial test you're going to order?
Serum IGF-1. It is the stable, reliable screening tool. Don't forget it.
And finally, your IGF-1 comes back high. What test absolutely confirms the diagnosis of acromegaly?
The oral glucose suppression test. Failure to suppress seals the deal. Logic locked.
And just like that, this phase of our operation is complete. You now have the framework to identify and dismantle these two high-yield pituitary board traps. Mission secured.
But we're not done yet. Mastering the pituitary doesn't end here. Your final orders are to prepare for the next stage of this mission.
Look, we've just covered the initial diagnostic traps, but that's really just scratching the surface. If you can't navigate the skeletal changes, the metabolic chaos that's caused by excess growth hormone, you are not fully prepared for the boards. Your next objective is crystal clear. It is time to master growth hormone. Mission debrief complete.